The meeting will come to order. Welcome to our June Board of Trustees Committee of the Whole meeting. It's great to see everyone in the audience. We certainly appreciate you for being here with us today. Our first matter of business is approval of the consent calendar. We have a recommended motion from administration. Do I have a maker of the motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to accept the agenda as presented. Calendar, sorry.
Thank you, Ms. Leventis Wells. Do I have a second from Ms. Mosley? Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The motion carries. Our second matter of business is appearance of visitors, and we have no visitors today. Our third matter of business is instruction, and we have one instructional matter this morning. That's item 3.01. Updated device and educational application use parameters. Dr. Royster.
Thank you, Dr. Stiles. Dr. Stevens comes forward. This is presentation by the administration regarding our administrative rule pursuant to board policy IA, which the board updated on February of this year. Both supporting Goal 1, student success of Greenville County Schools strategic plan, which emphasizes increasing achievement in ELA, math, graduation outcomes, achievement, dual credit participation. Administrative Rule IA ensures technology is used responsibly to advance student achievement, support high-quality instruction, and promote safe, engaging learning environments. The rule establishes grade band technology expectations and age-appropriate technology use guidelines, while limiting generative AI access to grades 6 through 12 through district-approved resources. It also promotes instructional quality and accountability by using usage and analytics and high-quality instructional materials to evaluate effectiveness and requiring all digital applications to undergo academic and ETS review for safety, security, and instructional alignment before approval. Dr. Stevens?
Thank you, Dr. Royster, and good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to introduce Administrative Rule IA and to again reiterate what Dr. Royster said. This focus is on the appropriate use of technology in our schools and specifically corresponds with Policy IA, which the Board of Trustees just revised this past February. Administrative Rule IA was created after reviewing information and feedback from a variety of sources over the course of this year. We actually began this work as early as September. This includes feedback from stakeholders, including students, teachers, parents, and administrators, as listed here. It also included analytics data from usage reports from student Chromebooks, as well as our instructional apps. It included research to make sure that our board rule, that our administrative rule was aligned to current best practices and that it was grounded in evidence. And we reviewed recent research, legislation, and policy from other large school districts. Lastly, a needs assessment was conducted to ensure that our administrative rule was in fact aligned with exactly what our students needed to be successful college and career-ready graduates, as well as meeting the requirements of South Carolina state standards and student technology proficiency needs. We also wanted to ensure that students had enough access to devices to be successful for required district and state assessments, and had access to courses, specifically our dual credit offerings. So let me begin by stressing that Rule IA is not an attack on technology. Greenville County Schools still firmly believes that technology is a critical part of education and that our students need to use technology and learn to use technology in a responsible and balanced way. Again, technology must be used intentionally to support learning, and this approach is in fact in line with the recent recommendations that have come out of the American Academy of Pediatrics, who specifically does recommend a balanced approach to technology and screen time. In fact, recently the AAP has transitioned from offering very hard minute metrics and requirements to recommending a balanced approach to ensure that people are asking what technology is being used for, what activity is it replacing, and the focus is much more on creating a balanced approach versus a hard guideline for minutes. So as you will see, as we proceed through this discussion today, we have approached that in a very similar way. Considering the data and the information that we gathered over the course of this year, Rule IA was written to include several different components. Dr. Verster mentioned most of those in the introduction. Specifically, it includes device use guidelines by grade band, restrictions for generative AI use, data security requirements, and the use of approved instructional applications. So beginning with our youngest students, our focus needs to be on active learning opportunities that includes movement, communication, peer-to-peer interaction, and the development of motor skills. Every kindergarten classroom, K4, K5, and first grade classroom will have 3 to 5 Chromebook devices in a small group setting versus having one-on-one individual devices. All of our schools will receive enough Chromebooks to be able to deploy one-on-one devices in case of inclement weather or emergency. But for day-to-day use, every primary classroom will have 3 devices that are set up and installed for a small group rotation. And we will give you some more detailed information about those small group schedules in just a minute. Elementary students in grades 2 through 5 also require interactive learning experiences. While individual devices will still remain available, Chromebook use will be limited to only the approved standards-aligned applications, and those are guided by the established usage expectations. So students in grades 2 through 5 will still have access to a one-on-one device, but the limitations for the apps that can be used on those devices and the guidelines for using those apps are dramatically restricted or dramatically reduced. Our secondary students in grades 6 through 12 also need balanced learning experiences that include collaboration and opportunities for technology-free assessment and instruction. Except in courses designed specifically to learn about technology, no more than half of each class period should be spent on devices, unless, again, the student is participating in district or state-required testing. All instructional apps for every student across every grade level must be inclusive of an approved app or application. As earlier mentioned, student personally identifiable information is a critical concern for Greenville County. It has been for some time. It is something that we take very seriously, and information security is a key component of this administrative rule. It requires students to be rostered directly to our applications through our internal GCS systems so that we can make sure that PII remains secure, and also that allows us to use analytics to see exactly what students are doing on devices. If students are rostered to applications outside of our GCS system, outside of our process for rostering and through this app evaluation process, it is difficult for us to be able to have clean analytics on what they're doing, which is part of the reason that we are continuously reiterating the importance of that approved application list. One of the additional components to Rule IA is the fact that we are governing access to artificial intelligence, and this is something we have spoken about several times over the course of this year. And just as a reminder, AI is continuously evolving. As you know, when we first began these conversations, we were talking about 2 general types of AI, and now we've expanded the operating definition for AI now includes several different varieties of purposes, and so we've listed those here for you. They fall into different technology capabilities, and they all have a different purpose in what they do. Most devices, most applications, most apps, most platforms have some form of AI running in the background. In fact, they are familiar to all of us. Most of the time, you don't even realize that you are using it. For example, if you are in any sort of a search engine and you begin to type in a search keyword, if you notice, most of them will begin to prompt you. They will begin to predict what you're searching for and give you fill that field in for you. And so that's a form of predictive AI. We also have search engine AIs, which are, they act as an agent where you give it a list of commands to do and it will follow through on that. If you're an online shopper and sometimes something's out of stock and it'll say, notify me when this is back in stock, you are giving that AI agent a task to do and it completes it on your behalf. I say that to say a lot of platforms have those components running in the background. They are not student-facing. There are things that are running maybe software in the background, but that is, again, another reason why it is very important that we continue to use only approved apps, because those are things that our team continuously monitors. If schools are using apps that are outside of that approved list, then it is possible that there are AI components that students can engage with that are not on our radar. So that, again, is so critically important as to why that we have tight control over what is being used. Specifically for us, as we've talked about before, our concern primarily is with student-facing generative AI. That is AI that creates in real time. It is impossible to vet what is coming out of generative AI because it is continuously reinventing or inventing content and putting it in front of students. And so for that reason, as we've discussed here, we have an approved platform that is used for generative AI, and that is only available to students in grades 6 through 12. That, again, has a platform that we've identified that has safety and security features in it that ensures that our students can practice AI, generative AI tools without having access to the wide open AI, generative AI that we cannot have control over. So it is an opportunity for us to allow students to practice the skill sets needed to master generative AI, but within the confines and safety and security of an environment that we can create and control. Again, we've touched on this, the importance of approving applications, and I wanted to show you the flow chart that review takes place. It involves not only ETS for the student safety and security to ensure that student information is secure, to ensure that rostering, there are no issues with rostering or the exchange of information, but then that also includes a review by the academics department to ensure instructional alignment with standards and with instructional purposes and age appropriateness. And in order for an app to even be considered on the approved list, it has to meet the minimum requirements for both of those departments. So that is a collaborative effort from both teams. So speaking of the approved app list, in recent weeks, our team has reviewed over 30 applications. We began this by using analytics to identify the most frequently used apps that were used across all schools, across all levels, and we began to look at those for a series of different features. We began to evaluate those for personally identifiable information, availability to roster, their alignment with our instructional priorities and practices, redundancy, historical concerns that we've had with some of those apps, and also user analytics. It's also important to note some of these apps are provided free from the state, or they are purchased at large scale across Greenville County schools. A majority of those apps are purchased at the school level, so the schools are using their own funds, local funds, taxpayer funds, to be able to purchase those apps. After that review, we kept 14 as apps that we could ensure were high quality, aligned with instruction, that we could keep students and student information safe. And so those 14 are listed there in green. We have 3 applications that we felt like we didn't have enough data to make an informed decision, so we are using this year to collect additional data, specifically around the return on instructional time, making sure that as students are using these supplementary applications that they actually are moving the children forward in their learning. And then we've discontinued 14 applications. A majority of those have been discontinued for, again, either safety or security issues, redundancy, or we've had historical issues with them where students have found ways outside of some of the safety features inside those apps, and we're continuously having to go behind and try to close loopholes. So this list has been provided to schools as early as last week, and principals and their instructional leadership teams have begun to meet with their teachers and their planning teams. We know that in some cases this will require teachers to move to less preferred apps, but it is, from our perspective, it is a small price to pay for the safety and security and ensuring that our students have access to high quality resources, but most importantly that we can continuously monitor using analytics reports to see exactly what students are doing and how long students are on these apps. It's also important to mention, these are supplementary apps. So these are in addition to. These would be applications that at the elementary level, as we discussed, students should not be on supplementary apps outside, especially at the early grade levels, outside of things that are required for ELA and for math content. These are some applications that, especially at the middle school and high school levels, or even in some upper elementary, a teacher may choose to use in a very small snippet of time to add to the core content area. Because we know that some of the things that we are requiring in Administrative Rule IA will require some ongoing staff, we have tried to be very proactive in ensuring that we're supporting school-based teams during this shift. We worked with a stakeholder group of principals, administrators, coaches, and teachers to create grade level specific guidance for this implementation, and that was released to schools last week. Again, we typically release things to schools on July 1, but we pushed to get it out the first week of June to make sure that teachers and administrators had time this summer to adjust, to make any plans or modifications that they needed to make sure that this implementation was smooth. So we have provided that guidance at the early childhood level, especially with the reduction of the number of devices in the room. We provided suggestions for scheduling, worked with teachers to help develop operationalizing opportunities. How are they going to be able to do what needs to be done with instruction? How are they going to be able to collect the data needed and use some of the resources that we are required to use by the state and the district? How are they going to do that in a way that also makes sure that we only are using those 3 to 5 devices in a small group rotation? And then also, we are actively updating curriculum maps and resources, and we are offering professional development on the approved apps if required. Many of those applications have built-in training systems or training videos that go along with them. Here's an example of, I apologize for the small writing. I hope that you can see it on your copy a little bit easier. But this is an example. This is just a snippet of the guidance that was given at the elementary level to show exactly what guidance was given to schools. This shows the grade levels across the elementary, beginning in K4. And along the left, you see those are the required content areas that have any sort of a technology requirement embedded in them. So these are resources that you're familiar with. We've talked about them in the past. And you can see at every grade level the exact requirement for any sort of technology. So for example, in K4 you see there is no required technology component for a K4 classroom, none. In kindergarten, we have a daily skills check as part of our Reading Horizons. That is a small component of the phonics instruction that students receive through the day, and that is a quick check. It's part of the fidelity of that program. And again, that is what we worked with a group of teachers to be able to organize the logistics for their small group rotation so that students could complete that quick check. It just takes upwards of about 5 minutes, and then they transition out of that small group off of a device. So it still allows the teacher to get the data that they need to pull their small group instruction, but it ensures that a student is not on an individual device longer than that small group rotation. Continuing down, you can see, again, that the use of Amira Tutor, that's something that we've talked about in the past. That Amira tutoring is only required for a certain population of students who may need some additional tutoring. And again, there are very strict guidelines for how often the student should be on that Amira tutoring platform and when those students should be accessing that. And then, of course, Mastery Connect at the elementary level, we've spoken about this also, in that Mastery Connect is a required assessment for us. We give that 3 times a year as part of our formative benchmarks, and we report that to the State Department. That is required. That benchmark is required 3 times a year. In kindergarten and first grade, we are able to give paper-based assessments that we then transition to information that we give to the state. At 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, we are still required to give those Mastery Connect assessments 3 times a year. And then, of course, in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, SC Ready is also given online, and so that requires devices. The use of Mastery Connect for other assessments is and has historically been a teacher-based decision or an administrative-based decision, and it continues to be that. But we have begun to have conversations and reiterate to principals and to instructional coaches and teachers the importance of ensuring that we are balancing how we are assessing children so that, number one, we can make sure that children are not on devices for an extended period of time, as we've discussed. Number two, that we can assess children in a variety of different modalities. We want to be able to see children working out math problems. We want to see children expand on their thinking. We want to see children writing, handwriting, and actually being able to practice the editing process on paper. We want teachers to also be able to provide immediate feedback to students and give that communication to parents. And we want parents to be able to see authentic student work that's coming home. And sometimes Mastery Connect makes that a little difficult in the reporting process. So we have tried to be respectful to making sure that we are not removing a tool that has been tremendously helpful to our district, but also, as we said in the very opening, finding a balance for how we're using it, but making sure that we are also using alternative forms of assessment to make sure that we are communicating and being able to meet the needs of our children that way. Now, there's another implication to this that we are beginning to look into. We are studying the requirements for e-learning specifically at the primary level. So, as you know, we are an approved e-learning district, and so in order to achieve that status, we have a waiver that we sign annually, and there is a South Carolina handbook for e-learning which stipulates that instruction must be provided in the form of online meetings or provided videos, and packets may only be used as appropriate for age or accommodation to provide materials for student work. They may not be used in lieu of instruction. And so after our team concludes the curriculum writing in June, we will assemble a stakeholder group of teachers, primary teachers, and coaches, and we are going to develop and begin to flesh out what that could look like alternatively for our youngest learners for e-learning days. And again, to reiterate, every school will have enough inventory of Chromebooks to deploy one-on-one Chromebooks in case of an emergency. But what we require our primary students to do on those Chromebooks during e-learning days may look a little different depending on what our stakeholder group can coordinate to make sure that we are still within the requirements of the legislation, requirements of the, requirements of the State Department, but also meets the needs of our students. So in closing, I've included some of the resources that we used as part of our research over the course of this year. Again, to reiterate that we really worked very hard to create a balanced administrative rule that met the needs of our students, but that also ensured that we were still prioritizing high quality instruction, that we were providing our teachers and our school support, enough support to be able to practice their craft, the craft of teaching and instruction, and making sure that we were not handcuffing our teachers in a way that would not allow them to be successful. And we feel very confident that this rule has achieved that, but I look forward to answering any questions or fielding any comments that you have.
Thank you so much, Dr. Stevens. That was an excellent presentation, and I know it answered many of the board's questions. We do have a few questions, though. Dr. Presley?
Thank you, Dr. Stiles, and thank you, Dr. Stevens. Quick question. The registering of the apps that have been approved or
Yes.
those things, how does that work again? Could I get a little bit more detail on that?
Yes. So the applications that are on the approved list can be rostered through what we call ClassLink, which is our Greenville County system for connecting student information with the approved vendors that we have licensing with. And through that ClassLink process, we control the flow of information. We are able to restrict what information applications receive, and of course, they are only connected to us after they've gone through the thorough vetting for cybersecurity, student safety information. Quite often, Mr. Webb or our team has reviewed contracts to make sure that there are no issues with the contracts of the vendors themselves. And then as students are rostered through ClassLink, that allows us in essentially live time to be able to monitor student activity within those applications. So, for example, Ryan Stevens, I could at the conclusion of the day pull up my son's analytics report and see exactly what apps he had been on throughout the course of the day and how many minutes he had spent on each app, what time of day. And so it allows us at an individual level, but then also a school-based level, a teacher-based level, a district level, to have analytics that can help us make decisions or to immediately also identify if there is any overuse, which is something that we are really working hard to support the schools with during this transition.
So you shared parents have the ability to see these analytics?
No, that is
No.
an internal, that is a.
Internal.
Right.
Okay.
Instructional coaches and administrators do have access to those reports. So if there was ever a concern, a teacher certainly could request an analytics report. If a parent had a concern, that could be something that they could approach their school administration about, and we could certainly support the school if they needed help pulling that data.
Absolutely. It's sounding like to me we're inspecting what we expect. And that's a term that is thrown around quite a lot about things that we should be doing. And this sounds like something that our district is doing and providing that support at the building level so that administrators and teachers and team leads and all of those folks can monitor the things. I was thinking about this when I came through, when I was getting ready to come here this morning, and I was thinking about tools for instruction and what it means to win the day in a classroom. And folks who've taught, we know when we've won the day and we know when we've not. And this situation is as old as time. It may not have been these, but I was just jotting down some of the ways that instruction can go in a ditch. Overuse of textbooks, and this is going to date me, but anybody given a chapter to read and an instruction to answer the questions at the end of the chapter. There's one of them. Overuse of lecture. There's a reason that sermons are a particular length in church, about 20 minutes, I think. So you can overuse that. Worksheets, don't even need to go there. Chromebooks fall into that. Popping in a video. All of those things. What the truth is in all of this is varied and intentional instruction strategies. As a teacher, we know when we've won the day is when the bell catches our students. And I can promise you, in all of the years that I taught, when all of a sudden the bell rang and my students looked up and were scurrying to pack up their backpacks so they could be at their next class, they weren't doing any of those things. They were working collaboratively in groups, and they were so engaged that they forgot that there were only a couple of minutes left in the instruction. I want to thank Superintendent Royster and your district team and you for putting this together. I think we are moving in the right direction, and I think we are positioned appropriately with this groundswell of looking at technology through the right lenses. And this is international, this is nationally, we're seeing it, and I think Greenville is positioned to continue to make adjustments that are in the best interest of our students. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Presley. Ms. Mosley?
Thank you so much. I echo everything that Dr. Presley just said, but I do have some questions specifically. First of all, I do also want to thank you as the chair of the ad hoc committee that put together the AI policy. I knew we put a lot of stock into what this this administrative rule was going to be, and I think you guys delivered pretty big, so I'm pretty pleased with what we're seeing. Let me ask a question about a comment you said when you were talking about the grades 2 through 5. Everyone will have a device accessible to them.
Correct.
But that it will be dramatically reduced.
Correct.
So can you define that for me? In other words, because are you saying that we've done some evaluation and we're realizing that right now, or maybe in the last few years, we've been relying a little too heavily on technology and we're going to scale that back
So I
in
think
those grades?
Yes, there is actually, not just in Greenville, this is a statewide trend, this is a national trend, that as devices and technology became more prevalent, the use of applications for learning, for intervention, for support, for supplementary work exploded. Ed tech is a multi-billion-dollar industry for a reason. However, we have the opportunity to reduce our use of supplementary applications, which will reduce the amount of screen time that we have at the elementary level. And so to reiterate, if a teacher at the elementary level is only using the required applications for district content alignment or for district assessments, then you can see all the way 2nd through 5th grade, there's actually very little device use. The opportunity for us to dramatically reduce relies in reducing our reliance on those supplementary resources, that approved app list, the things that are possible for a student to engage in and for it to be assigned for 20 minutes or 30 minutes. And depending on a situation or scenario, if a teacher is not actively monitoring that, it could extend inadvertently beyond that. So the elimination of those things and the reduction of those things will dramatically impact student access to being on devices for an extended period of time.
Okay, so in your stakeholder meetings, I'm assuming that was a welcome change?
For the majority,
I'm hearing from
absolutely.
teachers that
Yes.
it is, but I
Yes.
wanted to make sure that because I don't hear from every teacher in the district, obviously, so, okay. I really do applaud that, I do. I just wanted to make sure we define what dramatically reduced is, and if I'm hearing you correctly, parents should notice that as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. One of the things that we have reiterated to our teachers and to our administrators is, especially at the elementary age and the early middle school age, is that even sending devices home in the evening is not a requirement. That's at teacher discretion, that's administrative discretion. There are obviously some considerations to not sending a device home. You can't assign homework if you're not sending a device, or you have to be thoughtful in what you're assigning to students. You also want to make sure that students, if you are assigning study guides or things like that, that they have hard copies of things versus relying on Google Classroom for communication. So there is some forward planning that will be required. But we anticipate from here and our coordination with a lot of schools that the devices will probably go home at a much reduced rate than they have in the past as well.
Okay. So to that point, this may seem like a silly question, but are we prepared to provide paper for hard copy? Because I hear that's a complaint that, a teacher only gets a certain number of copies
Yes.
a year.
Yeah.
And we certainly don't want to discourage. I'm a Gen Xer, I'm old school, I like paper. So,
Yes.
the environmentalists
So-
probably feel it is what it is.
You're exactly right. So that is something that we spoke quite extensively with our stakeholder group about. I think there is going to be a learning curve, a transition curve for us to make sure that we are not supplementing or replacing, to Dr. Presley's point, one item that could become a distraction or a barrier to learning with another item that could come. And you could very easily go online and find a very low quality instructional worksheet to print off and hand children, and that's not going to move their learning forward. So this is an opportunity for us to really build teachers' their muscles, their instructional muscles, learning instructional practices that allow us to do work that does not maybe even require worksheets at all. And I'm old school as well. I remember the marble notebooks and actually having to create our own journals and our own notebooks that didn't require photocopies of any kind. So there are absolutely ways that teachers can creatively instruct students to accomplish the learning goals that is not reliant on worksheets or photocopies.
Well, I think the overwhelming frustration that I hear from parents, and I experienced it myself when my children were in the district, is parents, maybe it's our generation, whatever, we want to see work. We want to see tests. We want the results. We want to see if a child doesn't do well on a test. I remember having to go round and round with an administrator about getting a copy of a Spanish test to send to a Spanish tutor because I don't speak Spanish. And so going to the school and looking at it in the office did not help me help my child with whatever they missed on the test. And so that's like a constant, it seems to be consistent complaint that we hear. And so that's what I I guess when I'm asking that question about paper, I'm legitimately asking, will parents be able to see their children's work? Not just assessments, but also work. Because I feel like so much of that has been transitioned to this online platform, and I'm really grateful that we're using the word balance, but it needs to be tangible. It needs to be something people feel and see.
And that is something we'll continue to reiterate as we support schools.
Okay.
There's a couple of thoughts about those questions or comments. One, there should be no reason that the results of a test aren't shared with a parent, unless it's one of the state assessments, ESC, which we all understand. That, in some places, that was an issue before any of that was on a device. Didn't want to give the test out because you're going to use the same test over and over. You don't need to use the same test over and over again. So whether it's on paper or on a device, you need to be able to see it so you can learn from what you did wrong and what you did right on that test. We also got to keep in mind that particularly when you move past 5th grade, that U.S. history textbook that used to be like that, that's all on a device now. So if you're assigning work to a student at home, they can have access to the textbook if part of that is to read the textbook or to get information from the textbook. And I was thinking about this as Dr. Presley was listing off the different teaching methodologies. And this has come up a couple of times. One of the fairly often used and worse methods that somebody can choose to use are worksheets. It doesn't matter if it's on a piece of paper like this or it's on that device. They are generally not an effective use of students' time. I won't say without exception, but generally speaking, they're not. So giving out worksheets, whether they be electronic or on paper, is not a good use of a teacher's time. It's not a good use of a student's time. The other thing is, if you write something, I'm not talking about you handing them a sheet with it written on it. If you write something, there's one thing that I know for sure that you did, if you write it, that I can't be sure that you did with any other way I give that to you. I know you read it, because you had to read it to write it. So you read it at least one time. Now, if you're teaching, you like to hope they'd read stuff more than one time, but that's not always true. But if they do write that down, then you know that they've read it one time. And then there's all sorts of research that supports how that imprints on somebody's mind when they write something. So handing something to them already printed, whether it be on a piece of paper or even reading in the textbook, not near as good as them writing where you've checked to see that, yeah, at least they wrote the major points down. You have to write everything word for word. But that's an extremely important and highly effective teaching tool. And whether we're talking about an electronic platform, or we're talking about standing in front of a class, or we're talking about them working in groups, there is no single methodology. There's some that are not the best methods, but, and you hear, if you talk to people that went through teacher training, particularly a number of years ago, they talk about mixed methodologies, multiple modalities and all that sort of thing. All that means is approaching things different ways, because different people learn more effectively. Some people learn pretty effectively if you tell them things. Some people learn pretty effectively if you show it to them. The larger number of people learn most effectively if they're actually applying the things that you have shown them, they've read, you've described to them. So putting all those things together lends itself to the most effective teaching. And so whether we're talking about online or on a device or on paper or in person, we want to be about mixing those methods to get the greatest result for our individual students.
If I could share, I think one of the most profound experiences that I had this year was when in September we were meeting with InterHigh, and a student from InterHigh Council shared the statement that the Chromebook has become a digital worksheet. And so to hear from our highly successful students, that they were perceiving technology use in that way was just very convicting for us.
I don't disagree. Thank you, Dr. Royster. I agree. I think we have a lot of parents, in my opinion, that would really appreciate seeing a lot more things written right now. So, and whatever that looks like, I applaud that. Okay, to that point, Dr. Stevens, how do we, when you said in the high school level that there should be no more than half, because we're in block schedule, so those are what, 90-minute things? No more than half the class time should be on a device. Is that what I heard you say correctly? Okay, so how do we monitor that or manage that so that that high school student doesn't feel that way?
Yeah, so it begins with communication and expectation. It was very important that our principals and our instructional coaches had a clear understanding of the why, the purpose behind this, so that they could support their teachers. It begins with planning. How are we meeting with teachers? How are we helping them plan for those block schedules? How are we helping them plan across content areas? How are we inspecting their plans? How are we in classrooms supporting teachers? How are we helping to develop skill sets and strategies that don't require technology? There's a lot of work that has to take place prior to the students even being in the room for that teacher to be successful. And then once students are in the room, we have to be present. Our coaches have to be in and out of classrooms. Our model teachers, our lead teachers or our team leads who are mentoring younger teachers need to have opportunities to go and coach and visit other classrooms. Our administrators, of course, have to be present, and we have to ask questions. We have to inspect it, we have to follow up, and we have to pull that analytics report to be able to monitor that. So there's really multiple layers in terms of local oversight and support of those teachers. And then, of course, at the district level, we can pull similar reports to support principals and to support our principal supervisors as they are assisting principals through this.
Okay, so we're literally talking about half the class, how this will just be closed and not even used
Sure,
at all.
or again, if I'm in a high school classroom, part of the game is staying 2-3 steps ahead of the students. So it is a lot of transition and keeping things moving quickly. And so I might do 10 minutes on the Chromebook, I might do 20 minutes off, I might go back to the Chromebook. And so it could be a lot of moving around, and that could be very intentionally done to keep the students engaged and moving. Especially if I'm doing something collaborative, I could have stations set up where half of the stations require technology, but half of them don't. So it really, there's 1,000 different ways it could look. But to ensure that we are right at that 50% mark or so is going to take an inspection of plans on paper, listening to how teachers are articulating those plans with each other, talking with students, how's that going? Are you seeing a reduction in that? And then also the analytics reports.
Okay. Sorry, I've just a couple more questions. So at the state level, I know we have our state assessments that are on.
Yes.
I feel like we have been pushed towards this because at the state level, we're required to do that. Is the state starting to recognize that districts like ourselves are having to make these rules because we're realizing that this is not the best practice, so to speak? And are they going to be adjusting any of their technology usage or, requirements?
The Office of Assessment has not communicated that they're evaluating going back to paper-based assessments. In fact, for third grade, for our Read to Succeed students especially, we require that data so quickly to be able to prepare for summer reading camp because of that Read to Succeed legislation that I don't know how they could possibly do that with a paper-based assessment and the timeline that the state has created. So to my knowledge, there has not been any movement at this point. It's not to say that that could not be something that they work towards in the future.
One of the issues about that, if you go back to the days when they did do paper testing, to follow up with Dr. Stevens' comment, not just getting that information back for summer reading camp, we'd get the information for spring testing back November.
Right.
So basically rendered it almost useless to working with students to help them be better prepared for the test the next year. The thing that's changed in that interim has been all of those required state benchmark
Formatives.
formative assessments, which has added time, which would be something they could look at, certainly cutting it from 3 down to 2, but they could look at that as a reduction. But if they go back to paper and pencil testing on the other, it really puts instruction at a great disadvantage in being able to use the data.
And they actually just recently expanded that. If you recall, 2 years ago, we were only required to do formative assessments for grades 2 through 8, and they have now since expanded that to include kindergarten and first grade in both ELA and math 3 times a year. So that is an area that we would love for the state to look at critically.
Okay. And is that something we communicate to the state?
Yes,
Okay. Just asking.
emphatically.
All right, so my last question, and this is just more because I hear specifically teachers, that Amira, how long have we used Amira? Is this our second year?
This is our second year. Yes, I believe we began piloting it the year before that. Yes.
Okay. Do y'all seek feedback from teachers about that? Because I get feedback from teachers about it, but I'm just curious about whether.
Yeah. So we have actually done an analytics study looking at the return on the investment, and we do see a correlation between our lowest achieving students, our students who have the most significant growth opportunities in ELA. They do benefit from the Amira tutoring program. So our students, typically kindergarten, first, second grade, who are using the Amira tutoring, if they are lower level students, we do see a benefit to that. So that's partly why our guidance is so explicit to schools to reiterate who should be on that Amira tutoring program, which is an increased number of minutes daily. Who should that really be geared to versus who doesn't need that? And making sure that teachers have understanding of which students need to be spending that additional time and which absolutely do not. Did I answer your question?
You did answer my question. Along with that, and that's good. I'm glad that there is some correlation. I think one of the complaints is there's been some technological glitches. I have teachers that tell me that they are spending a lot of time having to be interrupted from a small group setting to deal with a glitch and to quote one teacher in particular, it would make a nun cuss, she said, because it's just frustrating to have to stop. And then something about headphones not always working as consistently as they should. So while technology in the classroom, I get the need for it, but when it's causing disruption and delays, and we already know that our teachers are,
Absolutely.
there's not a lot of room for.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, Ms. Holt-Pilkey, she has worked exhaustively with our elementary principals and coaches. She's created a task force of Amira leaders and master teachers who have developed some implementation guides. We've identified some things with the Chromebooks that we anticipate being very helpful in the future. Sometimes our younger students had inherited our oldest Chromebooks in the building by default, right? We would pass down the Chromebooks. When that was fine, while we were not requiring Chromebooks to be running high-powered applications. When we transitioned to using Amira, it was using more memory, it was requiring more, and our Chromebooks were maybe not as responsive as they could have been. So we have made some adjustments to that. So we again, also reiterating that only a very small portion of students should actually be on that tutoring platform. We would anticipate that those issues to be dramatically reduced.
Great, okay, thank you. I think that's all I have for now. Oh, no, one more clarity, just making sure, because I want this for the record. And you said this in the presentation, but I just want to make sure everybody understands. When it comes to the generative AI,
Yes.
we are only allowing. We're not out there in ChatGPT world
Correct.
or anything else. It's
Correct.
literally, we're only allowing our district approved, and remind me the name of that.
Magic School AI,
Magic School, thank
and
you.
so that is only accessible in grades 6 through 12
Okay.
at teacher discretion. So
teacher discretion.
teachers choose to use Magic School. The teachers go through training. The students have a small training that they go through, and then 6th through 12th grade.
So our families who hear the word AI and in classrooms, they need to be reassured that we are not out there just a free-for-all in any AI, generative AI
Absolutely,
role. Okay.
absolutely.
Perfect. I knew that, but I wanted to make sure it was clear. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Mosley. Ms. Middleton?
Thank you, Dr. Stevens. Very good presentation. I'm going to try not to repeat everything that's already been said. It's all very good. I am very happy to see that there is control of some of these apps and that they're not coming into the classroom with some preconceived information from a company or something like that, that we do have someone in the school or the district that is looking at that and just making sure that there's nothing in the background that would influence our children in a negative way. I'm right in saying that, aren't I?
Yes.
One of my big questions is, do kids take notes? Do they have lecturing? Do teachers lecture and then they ask the kids to take notes, write them down on a pen and paper?
Yeah, so especially at the middle and high school level, that is a very common practice. It's done in a variety of different ways, some involving using the Promethean board or a projection screen to present information, and the students copy notes from that or transfer information from that into a notebook. Yes, at the elementary level, especially at the early childhood stage, it's actually developmentally very difficult for students to be able to read something on a screen and then transpose it onto paper in front of them. That's very difficult at a young age. So we typically don't start to see that until 3rd, 4th, 5th grade.
Are students able, and I'm thinking more in high school or middle school, are students able to listen to a lecture and take notes? Because I think that's kind of an important thing to develop.
Well, Ms. Middleton, I would argue that students could pay attention and listen to anything that captures and keeps their attention. So it is really, that is the challenge of teaching, is figuring out a way to deliver information in a way that captivates the students and keeps and maintains their interest, and recognize when you're losing them and modify and adjust so that you can do something to recapture their attention. Is it possible for students to do that? Absolutely.
I think that I'm not suggesting that students be that teachers be entertaining students. I think there does come a level when you get into high school that there should be a variety of different ways to teach, and that sometimes teachers can be boring because they're people and they're just trying to teach a subject matter and get a lot of information out there. And I think students have to appreciate that, you know, it's not always going to be interesting. It may not be interesting, but that doesn't mean that you still don't take the notes, because guess what? You're going to be tested on that.
Sure.
So that's part of, in my opinion, learning. And a lot of you know that I'm kind of big on penmanship or cursive. And I've actually done some research on it. And I've had a couple of parents say that their kids cannot write. They cannot do cursive. And I've done some research on it, and now there was 15 states, now there's 27 states that have gone to requiring cursive and testing on it at a state level. So I think there is a movement to that, because I truly believe that kids need to write things, to formulate their thoughts, their opinions, and to work together on things sometimes too. So I'm not really super negative on worksheets. I think there can be a place for those, especially if you're working together in a group. I mean, it's 90 minutes of class time. That's a long time to, obviously you can't lecture for that long, and you can't have working groups for that long, or projects, and sometimes you need to vary it. I'm very happy with what you said. I think the AI policy is good. It's like a general background of backbone of what we need, and there's a lot of flexibility in it. I still hear concerns, and we all heard those from visitors that came, about Chromebooks and too much technology. And one of the things I do hear about is the Mastery Connect, that they don't like it. I'm not sure why. Possibly because they say it's being used too much, and that maybe you could just do this tutorial before you have these tests that are required by the state that have to be done on the computer. Maybe just on occasion, but I think maybe teachers are using it more than just that. I don't know. I mean, I don't have kids in elementary school or middle school, but I have heard parents discuss this technology thing and be very concerned about it, that now, the kids still take home the Chromebooks for assignments, even in elementary school? Is that right?
That is part of what we are working with principals and coaches to determine. They will need to work with their teachers to determine if that's a practice that they want to continue to send Chromebooks home daily.
Okay. I guess kids are always going to be on some internet thing at home anyways. I don't think we really have to be too concerned about kids being able to navigate the internet or being able to do games or being able to do stuff on the computers, because it seems like our whole world is that. And I think what they need is to really be able to write problems, math problems, and figure them out on pencil and paper. I think that came up before. And just maybe get back to the basics more, do that in the classroom with the teacher. And I guess if you want to send home a worksheet at night, just whatever. I mean, a worksheet is just really just questions about what you taught that day, I think, right? Isn't that what a worksheet is? So there's nothing inherently wrong with a worksheet, as long as the teacher's not just doing a worksheet all day or doing videos all day, or, I mean, there's a lot of information to teach. So I think we can't always be entertaining kids, and they have to get used to taking notes and studying from notes. And most people I talk to seem to think, I know for me personally, when I'm reading something or studying something, I'm taking notes. And those notes I look at, and then I know I'm learning it. If I don't take a note, I'm going to forget it. So I don't know if maybe kids are like that now too. But anyways, that's just my note. That's just what people have been saying to me personally. The Mastery Connect seems to be an issue for some reason. Maybe there's too much of it. And maybe consider not sending the Chromebooks home, especially for elementary school kids, and focusing more on writing and that type of thing, because I think that's so important as they become an adult.
Thank you.
Anyways, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Middleton. Ms. Linda Leventis-Wells.
Thank you, Dr. Stiles. Thank you for your presentation, Dr. Stevens. I just wanted to say a few things in reference to what parents feel. Now, you stated that that the teachers in the district and everyone are taking note as to how many hours or how much time is being spent on different apps that students are utilizing, correct? And what I hear from parents is they too would like to know exactly how much time their child is on certain apps or what apps they are on, and what is the benefit of these apps and what are they taking away. And we know that students in high school, middle school, high school are pretty smart as far as figuring out how to manipulate through this stuff and use a certain app to get to a different one and utilize all of those little lines and et cetera. So I think the parents are seeing it too. And they feel like there's a disconnect because they don't know and they don't get this information that the district has. And they would like to be more involved in their students' learning in middle school and high school, and knowing how they can benefit their children, how they can assist them to be successful, and at what stage are they notified that there's some areas of concern for their children, and does it only come at report card time, or you know, I've heard parents come up here and say, I would like to know what my student needs help on so I can help them pass this test or do better on the next. And we don't get that information. And so they feel there's a disconnect between their child and the classroom. And the only time they get the information is when they see the child is failing, or the child is not performing properly, or the child is not this A student like they once were. So how do we address that? How do we get more involved with including parents in their children's education? Because let me just tell you, back in the day, my parents knew everything I was doing and my grades and everything. And now everything is computerized and it's on, it's like electronic, and they don't get it like they would like to.
Thank you for that question. I think today is a great start for transparency in terms of parents wondering what their children could specifically be accessing. This is the list. So when we are talking about supplementary apps outside of content or curriculum or textbooks, this list in the green, those are the things that could potentially be used, if necessary, as a supplementary resource, specifically at the high school level, middle or high school level. So a parent certainly could look at that list and should expect to see those things referenced in a course syllabus, see those things be communicated from teachers as to what is being used as part of instructional materials. Transparency is something that we have really been proactive with over the last 2 years. So if parents are being told by their students that they're using things outside of this list, and that's an immediate conversation with the teacher, with the administrative team at the school to ask further questions. In terms of communication for assignments and for assessments, high school is predominantly Google Classroom has become really the communication tool for posting information, posting documentation, posting study guides, sending and sharing information to students. And that, I'm not saying that we need to eliminate that, but I do think that we, again, if we are seeking balance, that we are ensuring that students and parents know what is available in that Google Classroom for students to be able to access and utilize. But then also, what are the things that a student can be provided a hard copy of, whether it's within a textbook or some of our textbooks have supplementary resources that go along with them. What are the things that are physically able to be taken home? And then, again, a lot of that information is found in the teacher syllabus at the beginning of the year that really outlines the scope of the course, what to expect, and how parents can stay up to date on what's happening. Grades are uploaded into Backpack. So if a parent feels that they do not have information about students' grades on specific assessments, I also have a rising senior. I can't remember the last time he brought home a physical assessment for me to look at with him, but I absolutely monitor what's happening in Backpack to make sure that there's no missing assignments or to be able to follow up with him. So, at the high school level, there are some logistical challenges that are different than the elementary level, but absolutely there are ways that parents and teachers can establish communication channels to be able to make sure that parents are very aware of what's taking place in those classrooms and what applications their students are accessing.
Okay.
Excuse me, but without objection, we're going to extend for another 15 minutes. We have a couple more questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So we talked about elementary and high. What about the middle schoolers? Because we did have several parents from middle school that were having issues with not receiving and getting the information on tests that their students did not perform well on. I'll put it that way.
So I think, obviously, we have expectations for communication to go home regarding assessments and posting of grades. But if parents continue to have challenges or barriers with that, then they really need to start with the school principal and instructional coach. And then if they don't have resolution there, then certainly they can call our department and we can help facilitate conversation and resolution for some of those things.
With that being said, that just led to another question. They don't perform well on a test, but they can't get the tests to know what to work on to help the student understand what they missed so that they will be able to perform better on the next test.
Right. So that goes somewhat back to what Dr. Royster was referencing with the use of Mastery Connect and not sending. There are specific unit assessments that are created as a barometer over the entire district. We use the same assessment in multiple content areas to see how students across the district are progressing. We tend not to send those home. However, the study guides go home, assessments, quizzes, homework, everything leading up to that test should be aligned to that test. Those are the things that absolutely should be going home. A parent should not just be receiving a score report from an assessment without any other supporting information. A student should always be able to go back to homework assignments or quizzes or quick checks leading up to the test that shows their ability to master the content or areas that they're struggling with. We would never want a student to get to an assessment and be faced with something they've never seen before. So even in cases where we might not be able to send the exact assessment home, where we do have it controlled, where a parent can come in to see that at the building or meet with an instructional coach to look at it, a lot of supplementary material should have gone home or been communicated or been available prior to that assessment that would have given both the student and the parent a good indication of areas of struggle. And if that hasn't happened, that also is a conversation that needs to be held at the building.
Thank you. I have one more question, maybe two. As far as e-learning, I know the district's approved statewide, blah, blah, blah. But when we have weather that is very detrimental to driving, and we do the e-learning, I'm really not an advocate of e-learning. I'm just not, because when these K-5 first graders, et cetera, are on those Chromebooks, and if you have two other children in that home that are younger, and I was trying to help my daughter, so I know when I heard complaints, I said, let me just see what this is really about. It is very disruptional. It is very stressful for not only the child, but the parents. And it's, in my opinion, it's a no-win situation. Just because, you know, you have the child walking around that's going to find these different objects and show, and you taking care of these other little ones, but then the mother's like taking a shower, and then the Chromebook comes in there, and you're like, no, turn that off. You know, it's like chaos. And so I'm just trying to get some balance here on what is expected, because these children are so young. They're trying to learn. I'm trying to help the K-5, and the mom is trying to keep the others quiet. Do you understand how dysfunctional these learning days are, and the stress they put on families, and how everybody's at?
Well, I think we would reiterate that first and foremost, you know, we are an approved e-learning district so that we don't have to make up days, and our calendar is set to make sure that we are able to include e-learning days as necessary so that we do not have to make up those days. The use of Chromebooks for certain grade levels who are able to work independently works very well. But I think that's exactly why we are looking specifically at the primary grades for our younger students. Is there an option that could include some pre-recorded lessons from the teacher and then some workbook activities, or choice? We like to use choice boards in primary, which is a range of activities that the parent could work directly with the student to accomplish, and to allow more flexibility versus joining specifically scheduled Google Meets specifically for some of the reasons that you mentioned.
I will tell you, at Reedy Laurel, they actually send worksheets home, and it's so great. And they take pride in writing. I am a believer in cursive. I'm a believer in the more you write, the more you learn. But because you see it, you feel it, and you do it. But I would just tell you, I was with the teacher cadets, and there were seniors, and there was a senior at Wade Hampton. And I asked him, I said, can you sign your name? He goes, no, ma'am, I cannot. I said, you can't sign a check? He goes, no. You can't sign your application on a job? No, ma'am. He said, the computer can do it for me. I said, did you ever have cursive? He said, yes, when I was younger, but never had it since. And my mom gets on me all the time. And he was a big guy. And I said, okay, I too believe we need to teach. They need to write. They need a little bit of cursive. They need to at least be able to sign their name. And, but like, AI, you can be writing something, then this program comes in and jumps on, and they want to know if you want heartfelt, inspiration, whatever, and they'll change your words. And I'm like, I'll just write it myself, thank you. Delete. But anyway, maybe sometimes it's better that they do write it for me. But anyway, Dr. Stevens, I'd like to thank you for taking us in a better direction than what we're in and leading us. And I know your staff has worked very hard, and I appreciate all that they have done. So I look forward to more great things. Thank you, Dr. Stiles.
Thank you, Ms. Leventis Wells. And Ms. Fitzer, without objection, I'm going to go ahead and add another additional 10 minutes. Thank you. Mr. Cochran?
Thanks, Dr. Stiles. First of all, I would like to applaud the district. I definitely think this is a step in the right direction. I do think, though, that it's highly probable that we will have to go even further in the near future. So I hope this is a topic that can be brought to the board at least twice a year based on how quickly this stuff is changing for the future. My first question basically involves something that was on slide 7 down, I think it was bullet 3, but what it says there is talking about reduced digital reliance, and it says reduce reliance on digital worksheets and online submission tools when traditional methods are more effective. So my question is, how is it to be determined if traditional methods would or would not be more effective in a given situation?
So very typically, when we are looking at the assessment for Google Classroom, as things are submitted, it requires teachers to go in and assess and then analyze the data, unless they are using some sort of a specific app for immediate feedback. Whereas a lot of the instructional strategies that teachers use for quick checks, for collaborative learning, teachers recognize instantaneously whether students have it or don't have it. So it is, in some ways, using online applications can be more efficient for collecting data in terms of numbers, numbers to attach to students, but the use of observation and live assessment or quick checks as students are transitioning from activities gives you instantaneous information that you can immediately adjust instruction based on. So they have different purposes, but in terms of instructional strategies and changing the way that you teach or how you teach or what you teach, that live assessment is in most research and in my practice, I found this, and I would think that many teachers would say it gives you immediate feedback that you could do something with.
So other than those assessments where you're getting immediate feedback, your idea then would be that most other things could be accomplished better by traditional methods?
think that there is a variety of ways that things can be accomplished, absolutely. And I think that some teachers are going to be strong in certain strategies and others in other strategies. So I really do think that that's the beauty of this, is that we will have teachers who will be able to shine and be able to learn new strategies and new applications, and vice versa.
So it sounds like the bottom line is it would pretty much be up to the teacher then to decide in most cases whether this is something that should be done digitally or this is something that should be done with more traditional methods.
And historically, it's always been the teacher's discretion for how they, especially within a classroom setting, to be able to assess their students and to progress monitor students. Rule IA has introduced the reduction of screen time parameter, which will force some teachers to be more critical of when they do choose to use technology, how often they're using it and what they're using it for, to make sure they're within that margin. So they still have autonomy over how they choose to assess. They will just need to be more selective of when they choose to use technology for that purpose.
I have several more questions, and these are basically compiled from things that have been brought to us by parents, people in the community, and also particularly one parent that I conversed with recently. But first of all, with Canva, is there a school version of that?
Yes.
Okay. I was wondering if I could get your thoughts on this comment from a parent. Talking about Canva. Kids can access all kinds of content on it, use generative AI features, and shortcut work that would be much more formative if done by hand.
I think I would need to see specifically what they're referencing. If that parent had examples of student information or assignments that was taking place, we'd be able to drill into exactly what the student is seeing and able to access.
Okay, and that also includes where they are saying that with that program, the students can use generative AI features?
There are features in Canva that will allow you to prompt for illustrations or for pictures, but there are still within our firewalls. So our firewalls should catch a large number of things. So it would, again, I would really need to see specifically what the student would be able to access. The features within Canva will generate pictures from a bank of pictures, essentially. So it's not generative AI in terms of the wide open ChatGPT that we tend to think of.
When the new, just so I'm clear on this, because at the moment I definitely am not, from just looking through the information that had been sent out in the presentation, it was my understanding at that point that likely the elementary school students, certainly the lowest grades, but that they would not be assigned a Chromebook, to where it said that, of course, we were going to have them available so that they could use them in sets in class, three or four at a time per group or whatever the case might be. But then later, from what I heard you say, I'm no longer sure that that's the case. So when the new school year begins, what grade level students will still be bringing home Chromebooks every day?
That's going to be at principal discretion. So at the beginning of the school year at the elementary level, students in 2 through 5 will be issued one device per student. The requirement to take that home will be at principal and teacher discretion. The use of it throughout the day will be restricted to Rule IA. Students in K4, K5, and first grade will have a small group of devices set up in the classroom for small group rotation to be used under teacher supervision using the apps that we saw listed. If there is potential for inclement weather or emergency, the school has enough Chromebooks on inventory to be able to issue one-to-one devices to those students in the primary grades, but they would not have daily devices that they would be handling.
I think just from hearing from parents, there are certainly, probably most especially among our elementary school students' parents, a large number of them that do not want the Chromebooks at all going home. And so, again, I think going forward, I know this is somewhat of a fluid situation with the district, and as I said before, certainly a step in the right direction, but it definitely, from parents I've heard from, there seems to be a growing number that do not want Chromebooks issued to their elementary school students. Is there currently any mechanism in place to allow parents to opt their students out of AI usage?
So parents always have the opportunity to request alternative assignments. And so when that request is made, they meet with the instructional coach or the principal and the teacher to discuss if there's alternative resources that can be used, or a way that that assignment and that standard can be assessed or learned through a different alternative method. What we have reiterated to parents, though, is that we do not currently have a way to opt out of the online assessments that are required. So some of those formative assessments, of course, SC Ready, and some of the unit assessments that are online, there is no opt-out version for that unless it is part of a student's IEP.
So at the moment, going back to transparency and everything else, if a teacher is going to be using AI in the classroom, are parents even normally aware of that?
Yes, so in grades 6 through 12, that is required to be on the teacher syllabus, is also in the student handbook and in the parent handbook. There's a statement regarding the potential use in those grade levels.
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, at present, there is no form that a parent could simply fill out and say, I do not, other than the formative assessments that they must take, I do not want my child involved in using AI. They would have to go set up meetings with the principal, instructional coach, so forth.
That is correct.
What is the primary search engine that's used in the district?
We are a Google district. We use Google.
I know Google itself, of course, just from using it myself, has transitioned very much into AI these days. Seems like every question I type in, I get an AI response first. And of course, there's one of the biggest problems with that AI response is, for instance, my brother is a high school softball coach in Virginia. I recently asked it what the score was of a particular game, and it made up a whole scenario of how they had, I think, lost 10-0, and the other team only gave up 2 hits or whatever, and come to find out, I think they had actually won the game like 12-2. So it was a total lie that had been formulated there. Is there anything in place when kids type in questions that will keep that AI from coming up in Google? And if not, is there an alternate search engine that does not use AI that's available to the students?
Yes, so there are features within Google that can be disabled, and so that is, again, part of the reason that we want to narrow the scope of what we're using so that we can make sure that we're always on top of any updates or any new features that are being released. Google is notorious for being proactive and progressive, and they are continuously releasing new features. So our team, and Mr. Van Hule and Mr. Roper are here, and certainly they're the experts. So if I misspeak, y'all flag me down. But they are continuously evaluating the features that are being pushed out and analyzing the impact on students in alignment with legislation and our security precautions. We are able to disable all of those features. How we disable those features changes depending on what is required to be disabled. You're speaking specifically about the predictive piece. So yes, that can be disabled. It requires someone from our team to go in and disable for the entire school building. They have to do it school by school. The challenge with that is that sometimes things are released and we are not notified. Google doesn't send us a newsletter that says, hey, look for this new feature. It just shows up sometimes as they're piloting things or as they're trialing things. So again, if we have a smaller number of things that we're monitoring, it allows us to stay on top of any sort of changes so that we can immediately be responsive. And I will say our principals, our instructional coaches, our teachers, especially at the elementary level, are dialed into student safety and security. And if they ever see something that is questionable, we get calls about it immediately so that our team can investigate and make sure that we are adjusting whatever access is required.
So I understood that you said, of course, that we can disable those things. Is it typical that we do that in every school, or is that a principal decision? And one of the other problems I would have with the AI, with Google, of course, is it's even tempting for me if I think something sounds reasonable to move on. However, with students, I would think in general it's even more tempting to just read the AI answer and not go to other sources and dig further. So is that a principal decision, or is that something we're doing district-wide?
No, when we identify a feature that is outside of the bounds of our access, we disable it for all the grade levels that would be impacted. So again, it depends on specifically what the feature is, but that would dictate whether we're disabling it for all elementary schools or only elementary schools, and we're leaving it for middle and high depending on, again, what the feature is.
My last question, what is the current status of YouTube usage in the district? That is for schools.
So teachers are able to show YouTube videos. They have to include that reference to that YouTube video in their lesson plans as part of their instructional materials. That's part of the transparency legislation. Students are not able to access YouTube directly, but that, again, is a full-time job for our team to stay on top of the ways that students try to find workarounds to embed links to get to YouTube videos. So again, we narrowed the field of apps to support it. Some of the things that we've put on the no longer approved list are on that list for that very reason, because students continually found loopholes to be able to paste YouTube links into alternative apps to be able to access some of those videos. So that is something we're always monitoring.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Stiles.
Thank you. Without objection, we're going to add another 15 minutes. Ms. Doolin?
Thank you. First, I'd like to commend Dr. Royster for choosing Dr. Stevens to lead the academics department. Thank you. I wonder about exemptions, and will computer labs, computer tech classes, virtual classes, and any student that has a disability and requires tech to communicate, will all of those be exempt from the time limitation?
So let me break those down because I want to be accurate. So yes, certainly students with disabilities or students who require additional supports, perhaps like an ML student. There are some, depending on the grade level, there are some platforms, some supplementary platforms that they would be able to use in addition, especially if it's part of their core curriculum. So that will be supervised by the principal, the instructional coach. We have district staff that will help support that as well. So yes, certainly if it's required by an individual learning plan or a student learning plan, then yes, they would have access to those. And then you mentioned computer lab and STEAM lab.
Like any class that is, computer programming.
Absolutely. So, right.
Be exempt.
Absolutely. So those, if we have courses, especially at the middle and high school level, that are focused on technology or technology industry, CTE classes, dual credit, they need those platforms to be able to access the content that is outside of the parameters of this. Computer lab, so at the elementary level, again, Ms. Holt-Pilkey and I were reviewing this yesterday. I think at last count, we have 13 elementary schools that still have a computer lab or a computer/STEAM lab, in which case we would really, again, in fact, Ms. Holt-Pilkey has academic specialists looking at those curriculum maps to look at how we can replace activities that are technology-based, especially at the primary level, with things that are more hands-on activities that still allow students to experience the standards or experience the content, going back to either the science kits or, again, looking at different alternative ways that do not include technology.
And then virtual classes, obviously.
Very different, correct.
Then I like going towards the end because everyone has asked my questions. I would also like for the board to receive some sort of update by twice a year sounds reasonable. Do you think that if we receive an update, it would be based on those internal reports that you talked about? That
Analytics, yes. It would be possible for us to, and also at that, we also, as we continue to gather data on the applications that we're reviewing for their impact on instruction, we will progress throughout the year for that as well.
Thank you so much, Ms. Newland. And our last question, Ms. Goodwin-Caldwell. Okay, we need to add another, let's add another 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you for this presentation. And looking at traditional methods, I wanted to ask a couple of things because you know we're old school. When coming through the system, teaching and stuff, do the schools still provide agendas? Y'all remember the name agendas? I'm sure a lot of people in here remember the name agendas. The schools used to provide that
Some
to
of
the
them still do.
students, to the
Yes.
students.
Some
Do
schools
they?
do, yes. Not, I can't speak that that's a universal practice, but some schools still do provide those agendas.
Okay, I know you spoke about Backpack and Google Classroom, that the parents can access that to get information about the students. But what about that computer illiterate parent that don't want to use that? How do we communicate the information to those parents? Because I'm seeing that the parents are saying, I want something home to let me know what my child is doing. And I don't want to go on Backpack or Google Classroom to see what they're doing. How do we communicate that at the school level?
I think that has to begin with a conversation at the school level, with that parent
With
needing to have,
teacher.
directly with the teacher, or directly with the instructional coach, or assistant principal of instruction. Every school is going to handle that scenario somewhat differently. We do not have specific guidance around providing that information in multiple ways. We are required to give grade reports. We are required to update grade books within a certain period of time. Backpack is our tool for maintaining those records, and so most of our parents do utilize Backpack for that. But if a parent needed specific information communicated differently, they would need to work that out with the school.
Work that out with the school. Now, I was teaching an after-school program that was middle schoolers, and I would always ask them the questions like what we had, where are your notes? And sometimes they would tell me they would take notes in class, but the teacher made them turn them in. They couldn't study for the things. Do they still provide study guides? Do the teachers still provide study guides where the kids can take notes and they can take it home to study with it? But when they told me they had to turn the stuff in before they left school, I didn't understand. Why would you have a study guide and then you have to turn it in? You couldn't review the notes at home for the test.
Yeah.
Do you know whether they still have that the teachers use study guides?
Most, I would say, I would like to say yes.
That would be on their syllabus, wouldn't it?
I would like to say yes, that's best practice, and that's happening universally. I would assume that in a majority of cases that is happening. I can't speak specifically about a teacher having a student complete a study guide and then turning it in. That wouldn't allow them to actually utilize that for the assessment. But again, I don't know that situation. But to answer your question, best practice is to provide a study guide. And quite often now, currently, most study guides are put into Google Classroom, but as we're encouraging, there might need to be some reconsideration for how we share that information with students.
But that's still computerized. Do
Correct.
Have it. I mean,
Correct.
if they could
So-
have it paper,
so-
if they have a notebook that they're taking notes in.
Yes, ma'am.
Where
Correct.
they could have it.
Correct.
So something other than computerized, which I think that's the complaint that the parents have. If they could see the stuff that their kids are writing down and they can help them with it, then that would be beneficial to the parents understanding what they're doing in class
Yes, ma'am.
and
Yep.
not just computerized.
And again, I would love to circle back to the amount of forethought and foreplanning that takes place prior to students even being in the room for these things. It is going to require our teachers and our instructional coaches to think
So they're
through
gonna have
things
to go back to some of
differently.
the traditional methods. But
And for some of our teachers, this will be a brand-new way of teaching because they
Yes.
are young in the profession. So it is the onus is on us to support them as they are learning these skills.
I think y'all gonna have some pushback.
We have to do what's right for students.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you, Dr. Stiles.
Thank you,
That's
Ms. Goodwin-Caldwell. And we have 2 additional questions that have just been requested, so we're going to add an additional 15 minutes unless there's an objection. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Fitzer. All right, our next question is to Ms. Linda Leventis Wells.
First of all, you did great. This isn't for you. This is for Dr. Royster. Dr. Royster, I had 2 people approach me and want to know, we've gone computerized, Chromebooks, et cetera. What happened to the tens of thousands of textbooks? And where are they located? I think some used to teach here, and they said, there's a big storage full of textbooks, and are we buying any? I said, I don't believe we're buying any more textbooks, maybe library books, but not textbooks.
To your point, textbooks have never really belonged to us.
Okay,
They belong to the state. They shifted to all online several years ago from 7th through 12th grade. At the elementary level, they still buy, they're basically workbooks. You can write in them. They're consumable. They've gone back and forth with how they administer this at the state. They used to send you money on paper, and you rented textbooks from the state using that money they sent you, but you never actually got the money. So the textbooks never were yours to begin with. However, when they phased out a textbook, they would allow you to dispose of them, and you could sell them to book brokers, and the district could retain whatever dollar amount they got from the book broker, which would be maybe $5 on a $50 book, something like that. Then that all shifted to going to online and these consumables. So we get the consumables from the state. We get the teacher manuals from the state, really from the publisher. But we don't get actual textbooks anymore. Used to be, when you had an actual book, there would be some number of extra copies physically located in each of our schools. It used to be 110%. If you had 1,000 students, you could get 110% of 1,000 textbooks.
right.
So you get 1,100. So you had spares. But that's all gone now. And there may still be some book sitting somewhere in some book room that's been way out of publication, but we never used district resources to buy state-required and state-provided textbooks. And there's not, at one time they were all shipped to the warehouse, so at the warehouse there was a huge book room out there. But none of that exists anymore. There's some books out there that are like sets of novels that teachers can check out and they get shipped to their school. But there's not some big stockpile of books somewhere. And the state's book warehouse used to be the R.L. Bryan Company. And so there were physically books there. They were shipped from there at one time directly to schools, then to the district, then back to directly to schools.
You know what? I appreciate that information. Now I can tell people that we never bought textbooks. So that's a good
Well, if we
thing.
did, it was money they gave us that it was never actual money. It was just put in an account and you could only use it for that. So you were sending them back and forth money on paper.
Thank you so much for that clarification.
Thank you, Ms. Linda Leventis Wells. Ms. Middleton, back to you.
Sorry, excuse me. Thank you again, Dr. Stevens. A very, very good presentation and a lot of issues that you've managed to explain very well. So thank you for that. I assume that there will be a meeting this summer of the teachers and the instructional coaches, work days or whatever, before we come back to school. Can our views, obviously there's a lot of different views in here, and some of the parents, can those be expressed and work through with the teachers? So maybe next year, when school starts down the road, we can have another presentation and see what the tenor is and how teachers do feel about some of the things that we're talking about, and obviously some of the parents are coming to us about also.
So certainly, when we began this work earlier this year, we were very transparent with principals and coaches and teachers, our stakeholder groups, about why we were asking for this information, what we were looking at, because their input and their buy-in is critically important. We are only successful if our teachers are successful. And so we've had these conversations ongoing. We'll continue to reiterate certainly the concerns of our community, the challenges that our students and our parents are facing. As we get the year up and running, we have provided guidance and support through face-to-face communication, even at the close of last school year. As we were previewing this administrative rule with our principals and supporting them with how to communicate this to their instructional leadership team to build their collective understanding, and then ultimately how to support teachers in the building moving forward. But absolutely, that is a conversation we'll continue into next year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Middleton. Dr. Presley.
They say never talk about where you've been unless it is absolutely relevant. I want to address one thing about textbooks. Textbooks in our state are adopted cyclically.
Yep.
So I believe it's every 7 years, 5 years, something like that. The big kick in the teeth where that is concerned is the fact that it does not coincide with our standards revision cycles. Okay, so you may have a fresh set of ELA standards or social studies standards or whatever that's coming off the assembly line. And guess what? You might not get your new textbook for 3 years. So that's a little bit stymieing for, educating kids in the first year and the second year of the standards adoption. I say all that to say our textbooks are also primarily created, developed, what have you, in cities like New York, Boston, Chicago, but the two main states whose curriculum drives development of this textbook, and if you want to close your eyes with me and picture the size of these states, it's California and Texas, okay? I don't know what any of those places completely have to do with our students in South Carolina, and specifically our students in Greenville, South Carolina, who we're charged to shepherd their learning. So what I would posit and hope for we continue to do is that we're intentional. We're intentional about selection of resources. A textbook is a resource. And y'all, when one is developed and it sits for 7 years, think about everything that happens in 7 years. We have to augment, we have to supplement, we have to be intentional. So there is no panacea, there is no one resource, there is no one strategy, there is no one tool to make sure that this is happening. So just wanted to provide a little bit of clarification on the textbook. I know that I broke the we need to answer question, we need to ask a question rule, but we need that clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Presley. Last call for questions. Thank you again, Dr. Stevens. You've been up there quite a while answering questions, and I know you must need some water and a break. So thank you again for your patience with us. Our next matter of business is administration, and Ms. Goodwin-Caldwell will be chairing this section. So Ms. Goodwin-Caldwell, at this time, I'm going to give you the floor.
Thank you, Dr. Stiles. Under administration, under 4.01, the transfer of fund balance for security upgrades. That's the executive section. We have a presentation on the Zero Eyes project proposal. Dr. Royster.
Ms. Goodwin-Caldwell, I would request that the board consider an executive session so that we might talk about the details of this. To do so would be compromising to our security to talk about it in open session. We can come back and provide a summary in open session, however.
Okay.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we go into executive session to confer with the administration related to item 4.01.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Sailors, and a second by Mrs. Doolin. All in favor, say aye. Aye. We'll move to conference room A for executive session. I would like to call our session back to order. And I would like for our audience to know that we just left executive session to discuss security upgrades. No decisions were made and no votes were taken. I would like to ask Dr. Royster if he would like to make a few comments before I turn this item back over to Ms. Goodwin-Caldwell.
Thank you, Dr. Stiles. During the course of the last 2 years, our security department has participated in demonstrations and evaluations of brandished weapons detection of firearms from multiple companies. After that thorough analysis, it's been determined that Zero Eyes outperformed all others in detection capabilities and bandwidth need. So we're bringing to you a recommendation today to procure Zero Eyes to be deployed through our camera system strategically throughout the district, covering each of our locations, utilizing fund balance. As you know, fund balance increases are accumulated and assigned as non-recurring needs or recurring expenditures for a specified period of time as identified by the administration and presented to the board for consideration and approval. The administration recommends using unassigned general fund balance to fund a 3-year agreement for Zero Eyes software at $850,000 per year for a total of $2.55 million for strategic deployment of this system on all campuses. This assignment will not impact meeting the requirements of Board Policy DM or the financial activity of the FY26 general fund budget or the 27 general fund budget. The use of fund balance for non-recurring expenditures does not adversely affect bond ratings or audit results, and this decision would need to be revisited at the end of the 3-year period to determine if the desire exists to continue it beyond that point. I'd be glad to answer any question that might arise that is appropriate for a public discussion. Thank you, Dr. Stiles.
Thank you. Does anyone have a question? All right. If there are no questions, I'll turn this back over to Mrs. Goodwin-Caldwell. Ms. Goodwin-Caldwell, you have the floor.
Ms. Goodwin-Caldwell, I'd like to make a motion to assign $2,550,000 of the general fund balance to fund the total cost of the security items as presented.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion made by Ms. Doolan and a second by Ms. Brett. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Okay, the motion has been approved.
Thank you.
Okay. Our next item is item 4.02. Revision of Board Policy JBCCA, intra-district and intra-district transfer. Dr. Royster, would you like to speak to that?
Just briefly before Mr. Webb speaks to the specific policy, just as a reminder, our district has been a leader in school choice in our state for a number of years. I believe currently we have about 14% of our students that choose to go to a school other than the school to which they are assigned. What we don't talk quite as often about is we also have students who choose to attend school in Greenville County Schools from outside the boundaries of Greenville County Schools, and that has been allowed for a number of years under board policy. Those students are required to pay a tuition equal to the amount of the taxpayer contribution to Greenville County Schools on a per student basis from within Greenville County's tax base. Because we receive the state funds for those students, but we would not receive the in-district portion. That relieves the burden on the local taxpayer. The state adopted legislation this past year to require school districts to accept out-of-district students, which, as I mentioned, we have done for a number of years. That did require some tweaks to our policy because the legislature directed the State Board of Education to adopt a model policy which places some requirements on all districts to formulate their own policy in accord with the parameters of that model policy.
Again, a practice that we have allowed for a number of years, but not every school district in the state allowed students to come in from outside the district from another school district. So Mr. Webb has before you today amendments to make to one policy, which then in separate action compels the removal of another policy, because both policies can now be addressed within one policy. Mr. Webb?
Thank you. So Dr. Royster said a lot of what I was going to lead into as well for the introduction, so I'll go right into the specifics of the draft policy. As Dr. Royster mentioned, there's a law that required the Board of Education and ultimately Department of Education to create what is called guidelines. Now, those guidelines are required. There's a floor that is required, and this policy, as proposed in JBCCA, captures those guidelines. So a lot of what you have before you mirrors what the state has developed and what is required for school districts to adopt. Now, as Dr. Royster mentioned, this really is not a seismic shift or a substantial deviation of what we're doing. Few minor tweaks here and there, but really almost consistent with what we are currently practicing in the school district of Greenville County. So the policy in JBCCA as drafted talks about a capacity study, which we do, that talks about, it shows the room at each school for its space, and that's going to be available to the public on our website. There's going to be an application process similar to what is currently in existence and has been in the district, where students, both resident students and inter, will be able to apply within a certain window. Now, some of the timelines within that window might be different for inter-district students, those non-residents, versus the current residents of Greenville County. Resident students in that process will have priority over non-resident students. So I do want to make sure that that is emphasized. But there will be that application window. There will be a transfer period within that application window that will have about a 90-day window. Must start before February 1st. Our practice is that it begins in the fall. And planning demographics works hard during that time period, throughout the year, really, in that lottery process and assigning those students and creating that equitable process for transferring and school choice. Then there's the language regarding the notification of acceptance or denial, wait list, as far as rankings. Transportation is not changing within this policy as drafted. The only transportation that would be available would be district students, resident students through the magnet program. So if you're on choice, again, regular choice, you're not going to have transportation. It's going to be incumbent on you obtaining that transportation. The tuition and fee will be posted on our website, but it will still mirror what Dr. Royster mentioned, or as a per pupil cost, local funds for that student. But that will be, as far as the cost, will be on our website, and it will align, as part of the guidelines from the state, align with the Education Scholarship Trust Fund that's available throughout the state as well. Appeals process, very similar to what has been historically applied in the school district. It will start with the superintendent or designee as far as the actual appeal. Then if that is not resolved at that level, that appeal can go to the Board of Trustees. So it's really of a two-tiered appeal process. Now, there can also be reconsideration in planning demographics as really that first step. If there's some sort of technical error or misapplication of something, planning demographics can resolve that early on in the process. And so that is the most salient aspects of this policy. Again, mirrors the guidelines, a few little tweaks, but what we have done, I think it's beneficial for the school district, is to have a comprehensive policy that applies to both resident students as well as non-resident, those that are coming in from out of county, all within the school choice policy. So this really is one comprehensive school choice policy instead of separating it between the two that we used to have, one that had for out-of-county students and one with in-county students. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, we have a couple of questions. Mr. Webb, Ms. Middleton.
Thank you, Doug. The only question I have is, how does that affect athletic transfers? If, for instance, if there's someone out of county that wants to come to a school for an athletic reason, maybe because, J.L. Mann's got a good football team or something like that, and they want to try to play on that team, is there a timeout where they have to wait a year? Or what is the considerations for athletic?
Sure. I'll say what I can say now. Mr. Britton's also here somewhere, available to speak as well. He's up there now. I can't see him from this viewpoint. But, a lot of that is dictated and managed and governed by the high school league as far as athletics. And so really we would defer to them as far as their rules and transfer periods. Mr. Britton, do you have anything to add on that?
Generally speaking, if they're establishing original eligibility, it's not an issue. If they came into that school in the 9th grade. Every year the league tweaks their rules. They made one change to the Constitution this year regarding transfer. So just like our own students who move school to school within the system, one of the first questions that we need to ask anybody that comes to enroll at the high school level, to a degree, middle school doesn't come into play unless they're playing up on a high school team. Because our middle schools, we don't belong to the high school league for middle schools. We operate our own athletic program at the middle school level internally, because we've got enough middle schools that can play one another. The first question you need to ask people, is your student an athlete? Then we need to go check the rules to see if this move would cause them to be ineligible. Because it's almost that individually specific. A few years ago, they basically adopted the stance that you could make a choice one time for free. You can make a choice once. But those rules, again, change frequently, as do their interpretations. So it's always needs to be asked, and it needs to be a question individual to that student. So could they come and be eligible? Yes. They could also be making a move that they might be ineligible. That makes sense.
It does. So basically, this policy is silent on athletic transfers. It would be deferred to the league.
That's correct.
Yes.
As far as this policy, that's right.
In other words, if they would be eligible, in our eyes, eligible to play on any team we have, if they are eligible in the eyes of the high school league.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Middleton. Mr. Cochran.
Thank you. How many students who reside outside of our district's geographical boundaries do we currently have attending Greenville County schools?
60, Drew.
Yes, it's 50 to 60 per semester.
Okay. If I understand what's in the one part of this policy correctly, a student residing outside of our district who is given permission to attend one of our elementary schools, say for example, as a kindergarten student, would automatically be allowed to stay at that school until they completed the 5th grade, but they would not automatically be assured of then attending a middle school within the district. Is that correct when they change schools?
That's correct. You would still have to look at capacity. Now, that student would have a priority over another out-of-county, non-resident student trying to get in that middle school, but that would be the only priority for that. And now, that's all subject to, again, I think you know this, and it's in the policy, and it's been our practice for a long time, behavior, discipline, and attendance. If a student is misbehaving, significant discipline, that can affect school choice as well.
And in that scenario, I feel quite sure that we'd likely go out of our way to inform the parents that that's going to be the case.
That's right.
What is, in dollar amount, what is the current transfer amount, transfer fee for an out-of-district student? What's that currently?
It's $3,911 for in-county students.
Okay. And my last question, where it says that the parents for students that are outside of our school district, where they're allowed to make quarterly payments, for instance, if they choose to, what is our process if someone made the first quarterly payment and then no more payments were forthcoming? What happens then?
I will go ahead and say we would work with the parents to see if we could work out a plan for that. You know, the last resort would be to remove that student and you know, affect their attendance or eligibility at that school. So we would make every effort to work with that student to try to figure out a solution to that situation.
Thank you. Thanks, Ms. Goodwin-Caldwell.
Thank you, Mr. Cochran. Is there any other discussion? I have a question. Are the employees' children given priority with this, Doug?
Yes, it doesn't change the priority for children of employees.
Yes, and there will be an administrative rule, there already is one, but will be revised to spell out a little bit additional information, just like any administrative rule to a policy that's consistent.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions? Do I have a maker of the motion? Ms. Mosley?
I will make the motion as soon as I can pull it up. Okay, to approve the revisions to board policy JBCCA as presented.
A second.
There's been a motion made and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, is nay. The motion has passed. The next item on the agenda is 4.03, the deletion of board policy JBCB, non-resident students. Doug, you want to speak to that again?
Just quickly, that with the combining of intra and inter district students, residents and non-residents, in one cohesive, comprehensive policy we just discussed, there's no longer a need for JBCB.
Do I have a maker of the motion?
Madam Chair, I
Right.
motion to approve the deletion of board policy JBCB as presented.
Second.
The motion has been made by Ms. Brett and second by Mr. Cochran. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, is nay. The motion is approved. Dr. Stiles, this concludes the administration section of the agenda. I turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Goodwin-Caldwell. Our final section on the agenda is Building and Grounds, and Mr. Klein, I'm going to ask you to chair that section.
Thank you, Dr. Stiles. Yeah, on this one, we just have one item today under Buildings and Grounds 5.01, that's Facilities Project Update. Dr. Royce, do you have anything?
No, sir, Colonel Carlin, or I'll be glad to answer any question you might have. I don't think there's anything new or any significant change to bring to your attention.
Thank you, sir. As this is just for information, does anybody have any questions? Seeing there is no questions, Dr. Stiles, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. This concludes our Committee of the Whole agenda for today. I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Ms. Goodwin-Caldwell has made a motion to adjourn. Ms. Linda Leventis Wells has seconded the motion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The motion carries, and we are adjourned at 11:37 a.m. Don't forget to pick up your lunch on the way out.